In residential, the landlord pays for everything, but in this asset class that we're going to talk about today in this video, I'm going to show you how the landlord pays for nothing, the tenant pays for everything, and that alone is going to make this the best asset class in commercial real estate. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Jesse. I'm a commercial real estate investor, podcast host, and entrepreneur, and I help entrepreneurs get into commercial real estate. So if that's something that you are interested in, like, subscribe, and follow along to learn more about commercial real estate. So the asset class that I want to talk about today and teach you guys on is small bay flex industrial. So essentially what that is, a large, it's usually like 8, 12 plus tenants that are side by side. They either have dock doors or they have roll-up doors, and you've actually probably driven past them. They're typically in airport submarkets or something that somebody has developed in a suburb of a town, and you'll see all these HVACs, plumbers, you'll see any kind of like tradesmen really. Sometimes they're really small, and like we can get into like the micro bay stuff where they're like 1,000 or smaller units. It's almost like big storage units if you want to think about it like that. But these have their own bathrooms, they have a small little office, and like I mentioned, they have a dock door, they have a roll-up door, probably 14 to 16 foot ceilings or higher that give a small business the perfect place to operate their full business. So what you're looking at here is tenants that are too big to operate out of their house and likely too small to operate a 5,000-10,000 square foot building that would take a lot more money, if you will, to upkeep, operate out of, etc. And the cool thing is that there is so many entrepreneurs that can go into this. We just closed a 5-unit small bay flex building. We have 4 different tenants in there, and none of them do the same thing. I think that speaks to one of the most flexible things that we're going to get into with small bay flex. So we're going to go over 3 things that I think make small bay flex that best asset class that there is. So before I jump into that, I want to go over something that I think kind of sets the stage a little bit for this. So in residential, which is where most people start in their real estate journey, they want to buy their first house. Once they get their first house under their belt, they've got it rented, they're like, I gotta go buy 10 more to get to the cash flow that they want, something like that. And they're going to quickly realize that they should probably go out and buy multifamily, which is fine. Multifamily is a good asset class, but when you're scaling and you're trying to do this over and over and over again, you're really just multiplying your problems. You're going to have a massive management team that you're going to have to try to build out, and that's a whole separate company. Some people outsource that, but it just gets complicated really quickly. So in order to save you guys a lot of time in your real estate journey, I'd suggest that you don't have to start in residential. You can jump straight into commercial, and trust me, you're going to save yourself a lot of brain damage. We recently interviewed a guy that has over $400 million in assets, and his first deal was a 156 unit multifamily property. He enjoyed that time and he learned a lot through that process, but he actually told us that he would not do that deal again. He said he didn't need to do that deal. Yes, he learned a lot, but it was so much brain damage, it was so much stress that it's not why he got into commercial real estate. And so that's why I want to talk to you about small bay flex. So the first thing I want to cover with small bay flex is the triple net lease. And essentially what that means is the tenant is responsible for the 3 ends of taxes, insurance, and common area maintenance. Now that TICAM is what we call it, because it includes the taxes and insurance, is a reimbursement for those things that I mentioned, the taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance. And what you have to consider with that is what the taxes and stuff are actually going to be. But it's reimbursed. So you give the tenant up front what you think it's going to be, and then the tenant reimburses you, or you reimburse the tenant if for some reason it was too much. But essentially you have a base rent, and so that is the per square foot basis that you're advertising on, and the TICAM is an additional rent that goes on top of that. So just for example's sake, let's say you're renting out a space that's 5,000 square foot, you're renting out for $5 per square foot. That is gonna, you take your 5,000 square foot, you times it by 5, that's gonna give you the annual rent. Divide that by 12, that's your base rent for each month. Then your TICAM is that additional charge that I mentioned that goes on top of that. And again, that encompasses your taxes, insurance, common area maintenance. That common area maintenance can include the management, by the way. That management is something that's paid by the tenant, which when I first got into commercial real estate, I was like, that's crazy. The tenant's paying for their own management, but the landlord's not even doing it. That's correct. And that's one of the beauties of that triple net lease. So something that we love to talk about is simplicity. That's one of my core values and why small bay flex is one of the best asset classes, because it's simple. You have multifamily for industrial is essentially what it is if you want to think about it like that. You have 8 to 10 to even more tenants on your property, and it's usually separately metered. So all the utilities, everything just gets baked into that triple net lease that we talked about. And the landlord is just focused on that base rent because everything else is getting taken care of. We love industrial real estate because it's simple. It's an office, it's a bathroom, it's a warehouse. That's really it. You can get crazy with the ceiling heights, the column spacing, all that other stuff, but throw all those distractions, if you will, out the way and focus on what's important. We got industrial because you don't have the tenant allowance and all the other craziness that you have to put into the property. It's usually just fix the HVAC, fix the bathroom, fix the floors, whatever. And the beauty of that is a lot of the times the tenant does that themselves. We just closed on a 5-unit flex property and we did no work to it. We fixed some of the major capital things, but those were really just small things. And recently we walked through the property and the tenants had done so much work to it. They had painted, they had updated the flooring, they really updated the offices, they decorated, like it was insane. But the basis of this is that you're not doing a ton of work to this. All the tenants covering everything else. They're updating the property themselves, and it's just that easy. I don't know how to over explain it. You're doing that, you're closing the next property, the tenant does all the work, and you're done. So my last point is the value add potential. A lot of these properties are owned by the gentleman that probably developed them 25 years ago, which is the case for our last small bay flex property that we closed. And the rents were in the dirt. The rents were so low. We were able to get them not only to market, but even above market, because the market that we were in doesn't have the ceiling heights that this property has. So we were able to charge even a little bit more. So my point is, if you're able to find these properties that don't have high rents, bring them even just to market, and you're going to force that income and that value to go up immediately. So let's just say that the income was 100 grand of your NOI and you're able to increase it to 120, 150 on an 8.5 cap basis. You just take that 125 divided by 0.085, an even bigger number. So that's your spread of how much value you're able to increase immediately into a property. It's simple, but it is hard. It's a lot of work. I called that small bay flex property that I talked about and that I'm showing on the B-roll. I first cold called that over a year and a half ago. We just closed it and it took us about 3 months or so to lease it up, which is honestly pretty fast in this market. But I think that just goes to show, if you're finding the right asset, you're finding the right property, chase it until it's yours, and then everything else is going to kind of fall into place when you get the right property that is the right asset class and the right product for that market. So if you found this video helpful, my name is Jesse. I talk about commercial real estate. I'm not trying to help entrepreneurs get into commercial real estate and get their first deal done. If that's something you're interested in, like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.